kind of starting to usher in a new era for this show.
Yeah.
We've had a few different co-hosts in our time. We've had Tim, Charlie.
We should have had like an in
Christian.
memoriam planned,
Yeah.
like
I will remember you. Okay, that's how we know we're gonna be fine, because that was so in sync.
Yeah.
Crazy. I am so all right. We're okay.
Yeah.
We're okay. We had a meeting yesterday. We're like, where's the future of the show going? I don't know.
In the tank.
But you know what? We're in the tank together.
Yeah.
In sync at that.
Yeah.
In sync. So bye to all the other stuff. This show still exists.
Yeah, and last week we had like our goodbye episode with Christian.
Yeah.
So we're going to bleep out his name, and so that way it doesn't confuse our new listeners. No, but we didn't necessarily reveal what we were going to be reviewing next because we weren't sure with Ahsoka coming up in the next month.
Yeah.
And we decided to go along with season 1 of the Clone Wars.
Wow, we finally got here.
We're gonna be imagine saying that when we get to season 7, because it's gonna be a while
when we're 90.
Yeah, but also we were talking about how with the writer's strike going on, perhaps we can't anticipate that Skeleton Crew and some of those other projects will come out on time, so there might be a dry spell within the next year of Star Wars content. So
we'll finally catch up.
Yeah, maybe Clone Wars we'll just bust right through it.
How many years do you think it's going to take for us to get to Rebels?
I would love to get to Rebels before 2030.
I love that that's a goal.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, by the next decade, hopefully.
I feel like, wow, we finally did 2 seasons.
I'll have gray hairs and
finally
we're talking about my favorite Star Wars.
Yeah, and by that point, no one likes Star Wars anymore. It's just we're just doing it for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's par for the course. So what happened? We're finally in Clone Wars. What happened in these 4 episodes for the folks that don't remember?
Right. So taking us back to 2008 when these episodes first came out. The first episode is kind of a standalone. So Jedi Master Yoda is on a secret mission to forge a treaty with the king of the strategic system of Toydaria when his ship is ambushed by Count Dooku. Yoda and 3 clone troopers must face off against Count Dooku's dreaded assassin, Ventress, and her massive droid army to prove the Jedi are strong enough to protect the king and his people from the forces of war. So there was that episode. Do we want to talk about that one first? And then the next 3 are sort of its own arc.
Yeah, let's just talk about that episode real quick.
Okay.
Let's just
my first impression was kind of whiplash, because you're just really thrown into it, no context. And to be fair, as someone who has already seen this series, it feels like Clone Wars. That's literally the recipe for a Clone Wars episode. But it's just weird that we're thrown in, and Yoda is our main character and sort of our grounding character that we all know from Star Wars, but otherwise it's entirely new.
Yeah.
I was shocked that Asajj Ventress is in episode 1, which mommy, but she is one of my favorite characters in this whole series.
Why?
And well, I think we're all going to go on that journey together and see why.
Okay.
She's just a badass. And I've listened to the audiobook, Dooku Jedi Lost, that kind of, and his relationship with Asajj as one of his apprentices, and her story with the Night Sisters is some of my favorite plot points in the Clone Wars. So I'm really excited to go into that. But what a big deal to get the season 1, episode 1 feature.
Yeah.
She's the feature baddie.
Yeah, I mean, for folks like myself, the hook was kind of that, because if you grew up and you did watch those the Clone Wars animated shorts that was done by the same group who did Samurai Jack, and you already knew about her as a character, and she was just lethal in that show. So you knew going in oh, okay, we're in for something here.
See, I still have not seen what I think is called the micro series.
Yep.
But that came out between 2003 and 2005, which is interesting that they would space it out so long, knowing how short and small it is. But that also brings me to like the technical aspects of this, which in my comments I just wrote rough.
Yeah. I mean,
like, why did they switch art styles? Because that Samurai Jack like 2D style is so cool.
Yeah.
And 3D feels a lot clunkier. It kind of reminds me of the first Toy Story, you know, where it's like, you know?
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up because I thought that for all of these episodes. And to be fair, like Lucasfilm had never done anything like this. And at the time, what year was this even released? Like 2010 or something?
2008.
2008? Oh, I thought that's when the movie came out. I didn't know this came out same year. Yeah. So, I mean, for 08, it's not the worst. Obviously, it's not Pixar doing it. And they were trying to get a bunch of content out there. For me, a lot of movement seemed robotic and very clearly rigged by what would now be considered like amateurs.
Oh, yeah.
And so it did take me out of it for sure. But at the same point, I try to take off my 2023 lens and go back 15 years and say, how would this compare? But, you know, it would still feel like a TV show on a TV show budget, considering Finding Nemo had come out 5 years, 6 years before, and there were other films and shows that had done a better job. So, you know, this I believe was done on Cartoon Network at the time.
Yes.
And George Lucas wanted to explore the TV format for like how would this, you know, this medium work for Star Wars, because now we can explore all these other stories we've wanted to tell that we couldn't before, and introduce new characters and dive deeper into the lore. So kudos to them for doing it. I think, this was also done. Same with the micro series on Cartoon Network. My question for you is, when did you actually start watching it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I know a lot of Star Wars fans that love the Clone Wars grew up watching it. But in 2008, I was in like high school. So I wasn't really, Jersey Shore was a little bit more my thing. And Clone Wars was not necessarily in that same circle. I was very much an MTV VH1 Fuse
Are those all things anymore?
Yeah, I think so.
That's wild. All right, so let's dive into that for a second, because Christian's not here anymore to keep us in our reign. So your family, you're from Jersey. You live there a while.
I am from Nebraska. I have family in Jersey, and I've done like extended vacations in Jersey, like for summers at a time. So
now, when I've been there many times myself too, the Jersey Shore folks did not seem to be popular with New Jersey residents.
No.
So why were you into I'm trying to, as someone who's you're a deep thinker, you're fine, you're a critic of Star Wars,
but sometimes I just want something
trashy.
It's like those green caramel apple suckers.
Yeah.
Where they like stick to the roof of your mouth and you can feel them like rotting your teeth like in time, but you're like, dang, this is so tasty.
But right now,
yeah. So I also don't have a lot of drama in my like personal life, so it's kind of nice to outsource it from reality TV.
You know how many people would listen to this and be like, wait, you have no drama in your life, so you actively look for it?
I'm like, it's very validating to see that, like, wow, nobody I know has that much of a problem with anything, you know. But back to your point, I did not watch Clone Wars when it was coming out, so my husband and I sat down and started watching it at the start of the pandemic. So that was sort of like worked out perfectly, because what else were we going to do? And
all that content.
Yeah, we had tried to start season 1 before the pandemic a while ago, and getting through like the first like maybe 8 episodes, we were like, oh, I could kind of go without watching this ever again.
Yeah, yep.
But we really committed to it, and I'm glad we did.
Yeah.
Because that was also when season 7 was being promoted, that it was going to be coming out. So it was going to get like sort of a proper conclusion. And that buzz also got us to like rework it into our watching schedule. What about
That's really
you?
interesting. No, I started in 2014, and I remember I, got my own place and was in my own apartment and couldn't be judged by roommates for
Yeah.
watching this kid's show because I knew some like diehard Star Wars fans. But in 2014, before Force Awakens, if you knew any diehard Star Wars fans, at least me, like I still wasn't public about it
Mm,
because at that time in 2014 there was like the prequels, and if you liked the prequels you were like a
an
child, you're
idiot.
idiot,
Yeah.
yeah, huge nerd, no one is allowed to like the prequels kind of thing. And I remember going on the internet and learning more and more about Force Awakens, being so hyped for it that summer. And I was like, okay, like I remember I repurchased Star Wars Bounty Hunter on GameCube, played that, and started watching the Clone Wars. But then life hit, and I think within the first season or two, I was like, I give. I don't really care actually. It's just, Spurs had won the championship that summer. I got other interest, and Star Wars just fell to the
Mm,
wayside until The Force Awakens came out. It took over the world by storm again, and I never watched it again until the pandemic. I heard there was a season 7 coming out. I'm like, okay, I need to actually go through this. So I spent the pandemic going through Star Wars, or the Clone Wars, Star Trek: The Next Generation, and Star Trek: Deep Space Nine. And
wow.
yeah, it was a lot to get through. I'm like, this is the time of my life I can get
Yeah,
through
that's
this
true.
much content. And yeah, it was all of which were extremely rewarding.
Yeah. But mind you, this show came out when TV shows used to be like 24 episodes long,
Yep.
which seems like a bygone era
Yeah.
because really TV shows nowadays are 10
10.
episodes,
Yep. At most.
barely.
Yep.
Mandalorian's 8. Like,
Yeah.
whoa.
34-minute
So
episodes,
getting
8
through
episodes.
this is going to be quite, we're going to feel like Lewis and Clark.
Yeah.
Like traversing through some good, some not so good.
Yeah. And this episode is one of those that's not so good.
It isn't. What did we rank it?
Overall, we gave it a 54.9%.
Yeah.
But you know what? Like,
Again, like so as we just said, there's a lot of content that we're going to be going through here,
yeah.
and not all of it's going to be
And let's also put our hats back on here. The intended audience at this point in time is kids.
children.
They're not trying to tell this deep story to really captivate audiences
Mhm.
that like, and I mean, the thing is, like, even some kids stories like have really good hooks, like Finding Nemo and stuff, but this is pretty simple. Like, we're introduced, all right, the Clone Wars is happening. There is this, where the planet Tridaria, whatever,
Mhm.
they're deciding, are we going to be a separatist planet or fall in line with the Republic? And it all came down to who can better defend us.
Yeah.
And it's funny that they're like, instead of taking an average Jedi, they took Yoda
Yeah.
as for their sample size of data, but that's its own thing. Um,
Yoda's kind of like wacky in
this
this
one too,
episode.
yeah, and I like that.
Which is kind of takes me back to the original trilogy.
Yep.
Him being just kind of like goofy, ha ha ha, and like
Yeah.
he reads all those clones. I do really love the scene when they go into like this cave or something to hide
Oh, yeah,
out, and
yeah,
he
yeah.
asks the clones to take off their helmets so we can see their faces, and they're like, "Why do you need to see our faces? We all look the same." And he was like, "The force is in all of you, even if you don't realize it, and each of you brings something different." And then he also reads them to filth in that moment. He was like, "You think you're a hot shot, but actually your strengths are here," and all this stuff. So that was kind of cool, very like sage wise master of
Yeah.
him. But he is
Yeah.
like a little kind of kooky, which I was like, yeah. I was like, all right, this is a kids show. But again, it feels a little much of a jolt, which is why I kind of pulled the story down, that we're just like, blah, like here we are.
Yeah. There's yeah, exactly. There is a moment though that took me back to the Samurai Jack style of animation where Yoda runs underneath the, droid tank,
Mhm.
and he's got his lightsaber up, facing it, and runs through, and the next shot is him kind of turned around and it falls and blows up. And
Mm,
that's so, like, that
yeah.
felt like that was a nod to that animation style, because you always see some guy with a sword running through,
And then a pause,
just
and then
like
yeah.
right behind him.
Yep.
That felt like a nod to
Yeah.
that micro series. Maybe not, but that's what I was feeling. Um, yeah, overall, like, this episode had very little impact on the greater story at play. they're figuring out what is the Clone Wars. And I think that's what this whole first season is to
setting
test.
up. Yeah.
And so, yeah, look, we're not here to knock it. We're not here to say it's the worst stuff in the world. It's just right now, 54%. Like, it's watchable. It's not the best Star Wars in the world.
Yeah.
It's good enough to be watched, barely.
Yeah.
But it's there. Also, the clones' dialogue felt a little clunky. They're like, I don't know, something like they're
all
like,
of their voices sound exactly the same too.
At this point,
it was like really copy paste.
And they're like, do you know what this guy's saying? He's like, oh, I don't know. He's a Jedi. They're like, they're figuring it out. And that's again
that's part of even just creating a show. Yeah,
it's a pilot, so we'll give it all sorts of grace here.
But I did want to say before we move on, I wrote this down. Though it is the first episode of the series, Ambush is the 5th episode chronologically, being preceded by the later episode Supply Lines and succeeded by the next episode Rising Malevolence, which is the first part of a 3-part storyline.
Yeah,
which kind of is a good segue.
Absolutely. So let's go into it. What happened in the next 3 episodes?
All right. The Malevolence arc is a 3-part story comprised of episode 2, Rising Malevolence, episode 3, Shadow of Malevolence, and episode 4, Destroy Malevolence. And that reveals that Separatists have developed a new secret ion cannon weapon that takes out Jedi Master Plo Koon and his crew of clones. Anakin, his Padawan Ahsoka, save him from the debris while Grievous, under orders of Count Dooku, moves to attack a clone hospital. Anakin makes risky moves with his squadron to take down the weapon. Darth Sidious and Count Dooku arrange for Senator Amidala and C-3PO to cross through the middle of the battle, and Grievous takes them as hostages, while Obi-Wan and Anakin have to figure out how to save them.
That was really tough to get through for me.
Yeah.
I had a tough time. What did you, before I go off, what did you think?
It's quite an adjustment to change from where we've been, even with just the Bad Batch, which was familiar to have multiple episode storylines. But this, like, did it need to be 3 episodes? Not necessarily. The middle one kind of felt like the middle, you know? And yeah, but however, it did bring me a lot of joy to see our favorite characters back on screen again.
Yeah.
Like Anakin, Obi-Wan, Padme. Yeah.
And to praise that, I really do think that who plays at Matt Lanter, he plays Anakin. The tone, it's super, like, it's, if you've already watched it before, you've already fallen in love with that version of Anakin. And if not, I really think that even though it seemed a little bit it did seem robotic, they've really got a good job on grasping like his mannerisms here. And it's interesting how like this version of Anakin for a lot of people is like more beloved by this point. So
that'll go into my hot take later. All
right. So it's, look, I'm happy to see them at the same time. Storyline wise, I felt like it was very weak. There's a new, it is the Malevolence.
Yeah, that is Grievous's ship, is the Malevolence, and that is, they've built this like secret ion cannon.
Yeah, and I want to also praise one more thing too. In that episode, the first one, they have the cannon. You've got Plo Koon's fleet gets taken out by that ray, and it's pretty dark. How instead of just like shooting you down, they go one by one, and the droids rip, and they show it too. They rip the clones out of their ship and just into space. That's how, like, yeah, exactly. Bye, Felicia. Like, that's, that you're, like,
dark.
That's a dark way to take these guys out. And so the whole point show, and then, they hint right now, like, oh, we're just inconsequential. We're just a number. And Plo Koon's entire episode indicating, no, you're important. You have value. And he's like, not to me, know? And so that was absolutely like this. I felt like was the strongest episode, the first one of those 3, just for that reason alone. Like, really showcasing, like, first time we've really seen Plo Koon.
Yeah, I was going to say that too, because again, I haven't seen the micro series, and I'll probably end up watching that like in the middle of this, like as we're reviewing this, just so I can have some more context. But Plo Koon doesn't have a lot of lines even in the movies. If he does have one, he's just again one of those like cool background characters that ended up becoming like Dave Filoni's favorite. And that's why he gets sort of this front facing like star action in this first arc. But I also wrote down in my notes, Plo Koon sounds like God. He has just like the perfect voice of, yes. And I was also telling Jake as I was watching it, I was like, Plo Koon's kind of scary. And he was like, that's racist. He's like, he needs a mask. And I was like, but traditionally, masked figures are villains.
Yeah.
And his mask is like really interesting because it looks like it has like biomedical uses as well. What does he look like behind the mask? Why does he need the mask? Like, obviously his eyes are covered. Like, I want to know what his eyes look like. That is truly like the window to a person soul. And it's perfect. It's purposefully blocked in this character design. So I am curious by Plo Koon. Again, he sounds like God, and he has such like wisdom and care for his troop that really rang true.
Yeah. And then the rest of this episode, you have Ahsoka, who's literally just right now mini Anakin.
Yeah.
But they're, and it's funny, like you see Palpatine right now, who's the first thing he says to the Jedi when he realizes Anakin, like this is a great way to get rid of a Jedi Master. He's about to die. Just intervene. Don't let Anakin in. But it's funny, the Jedi Council, he's like going in saying, who greenlit this? Who's allowing him to be there? The Jedi Master's right then and there. She's like, why do you care?
Yeah.
Like, why are you? This is our guy. Like, and like, why with just Ahsoka alone? So at this point, like, and it's a rescue mission. He's not intervening with Grievous. So why on this mission do you care? And then he steps in to tell Anakin. Now, Anakin, I would believe him a little bit more because he's showcased like, I'm more than a friend. Like, I really care about you. So I could see why he would say, you need to turn around. It's over. Like, I don't want to see you get hurt. And then Ahsoka, obviously, is like, nope, I'm going to drive. We're going to go save him. And, you see that mini Anakin in her. I do want to say one more thing. Maybe this is me, and maybe I'm old fashioned. So call me out if I am.
I'd be happy to.
But I feel like it's weird that Ahsoka, who feels like an 11-year-old right now, has got this like high-rise crop top feel to her. Where
it's not even a crop top. It is what we call a tube top, like a bandeau bra, essentially.
Which is just, it feels weird to me that you have that for essentially like, what is she, like 11, 12, 13,
14 something. Yeah, a minor.
Yeah. I just think that's weird. Maybe I'm just old fashioned. I just think that's odd.
No, it's definitely odd, and it's uncomfortable.
I think so too.
It's just so icky. Like, you could have put her in like anything, like even just like Padawan robes.
Yeah. Again, I'm like watching it with like my kid, and I'm just like, yeah, that's kind of like, that's weird. That's just me though. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of other people that are like,
no, it wasn't necessary. It's also just not practical.
Yeah.
Any person that wears tube tops will tell you that you have to keep pulling it up all the time. So who's going to go into a battle where they're like swinging their arms and stuff and they're scared that their like chest is going to pop out? So
not Ahsoka.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate decision, and I look forward to when her character gets a little bit of an upgrade.
A little more respect.
Yeah.
Put some spec on her. So
I wrote in here that the graphics, they kind of look like a sim generator, like when I think of like Sims 2, and how everything kind of feels like flat shapes that they interact with. But I do appreciate that they try to add texture and like brush strokes and stuff into into the design. I do think the characterizations of the characters, like how they stylize Anakin and Obi-Wan and Sidious, is really creative. Or like Dooku with his like really long face.
Yeah.
Like those caricatures are really really cool. I buy into them.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I do too.
It's just the fluidity isn't totally there, but they're trying.
And they will.
They're trying.
We all know they get there.
Yeah.
By the time the Bad Batch,
it becomes so noticeable too. I remember like I think the next like upgrade in their performance happens in season 2, but like you recognize it right away. You're like, holy cow, there's like definitely an update that went through.
Yeah. So we're getting through this first season, these episodes. But that first one was the best in my opinion. Still lacked left a lot to be desired. I gave it a, let's see, a 54.8,
Oh, I wanted to call
55.
out how in the music of these, it does a really good job at weaving in like the traditional John Williams like Force themes
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and kind of Kevin Kiner's own like fill to it, because
Yep.
like we get the really authentic John Williams scores like being used in this, which is always a win.
And the last one, the first episode, had Yoda's theme at the
Yeah,
end. The second one, or maybe the third one, it has the Force theme played in. So
in this first episode of this arc, there's also a battle droid that's humming the Imperial March.
yeah, I thought I heard that. I was like,
Yeah.
or at least the beginnings of it.
Yes. Yeah. And I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, there was also like when Dooku at the beginning of the episode, as they're on the Malevolence, he's like, "You may fire when ready." I'm like, all right, cool. Little nod to
Yeah.
A New Hope. So it goes into the immersive universe. Um, yeah, I think outside of that though, that's our review for that second episode, which we put at a 60.30%. So moving up, not much, but unfortunately, this next episode we just destroyed at an overall
This the last
44%.
episode 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one was the middle one of that arc.
Oof,
and we
was
were just
rough.
like,
It dragged.
It did. So essentially, Dooku gives Grievous this order to like blow up a clone hospital because they're trying to play off of the Jedi's weakness that they like actually see their clones as important. And Anakin and his squad tries to take a shortcut, and we run into, these are called, let's see, giant space dwelling Nebrae mantas, which were these type of like Purgle type space things, which was really cool to see again because obviously big fan of Rebels. We got the Purgle nod in Mando season 3, and I had totally forgot that the species existed, but it's kind of like a nod to those future pieces.
Yep.
I also wrote that there's like random Dutch angle ? Where like sometimes like I remember Anakin and Ahsoka walking through like an area and like it's just a Dutch angle, like off tilt, and I'm like, why?
Yeah, no reason.
No reason.
Just cause.
Okay.
Yep. No, I personally just thought this episode really dragged for me. I mean, I enjoyed that not Purgle scene where they were. I thought that was cool. Like that helped with the technical aspects for me because it was neat to see. But besides that, yeah, they go in. Anakin goes in a little hot. They fail and end up, I think if I remember correctly, like they do end up disabling the ship by shooting at it, whatever. It tries to launch the weapon by the end, and it ends up kind of imploding in that area. So then Obi-Wan's fleet comes in and they're saved.
Right.
So Anakin goes in. Now it's up to them to pursue Grievous and essentially shoot him out of the sky and help, end the war sooner and shoot him out of space, I should say. So really, that's all that happened in that episode. We put out a 44%. With that, do we just go to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to say.
All right, cool.
But this one, I was just so excited to see Padme back on screen. Like, I just haven't seen her in so long. And then, of course, there's like the Anakin and Padme scenes, and I'm just like,
yeah. I was thinking, I'm like, does she like ever recognize how badass he is? Because like there's so many moments where he like kind of throws her into an elevator and saves her. And there's all these two battle droids he's taken out, like they're butter, and she sometimes won't even remark and like is like disinterested. And one time she's like, all she'll say is, "No, you've always had like every time ever since you were a little boy, you've been fascinated with droids," or something like that.
And he was like, I used to put them together, now I take them apart.
Yeah, it's like, all right, like just like there's never any awe. She just has come to expect him to be just like,
but also
awesome.
She like can't really expose her feelings. But I found it interesting that as soon as like Anakin finds out that Padme's been like taken hostage, he calls her Padme. He doesn't say Senator Amidala or Senator at any point, and he's calling her by her first name like the entire time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hello, red flag.
Yeah, Obi-Wan's choosing to look the other way at this
Yeah.
point. Like,
Okay. Now that you mentioned Obi-Wan, do his eyes seem like obnoxiously light blue? They look like icy blue. I'm like, are you the what's it called, the Snow King or whatever from Game of Thrones? I was like,
no, it doesn't
it
take me out
it
that much.
it took me out.
No, it didn't take me out that much. Yeah, it is definitely kind of caricature. Like they'll just take a few features and they're really gonna really press into it.
Yeah.
I also, the voice actor for him, forget his name, but saw him at a celebration as well. I thought he does a great job
Oh yeah.
playing Obi-Wan. So big fan there. But yeah, this episode overall, like pretty just not that interesting either. Like Grievous gets away, the Malevolence ends up getting destroyed because Anakin, like as they're getting ready to reactivate their hyperdrive, he has it getting the moment they reactivate it, he's gonna have it get it steered into a moon. Grievous is all pissed because now he's all of his failings over the last 3 episodes are getting reported to the Emperor, and he's
Now
all
he
like,
doesn't even have a ship.
he doesn't have a ship, so he goes into hyperspace to get away from everyone and escape captivity. But that's really it. I mean, and then Anakin and Padme almost have an on-screen kiss scene.
I know the tension.
Yeah, I guess, or something. But yeah, and that's it. So there really isn't a whole lot of a story here. So there we gave this one a 56.5. If you look at it holistically, what really happened? Clones died. And there was a ship, and now there isn't. Outside of that,
It almost was like a pre-Holdo maneuver.
kinda. Yeah, but outside of that, they're really like consequently, when you look at it from like what happened in the greater Star Wars universe, there was not really anything that happened.
But that's kind of the point of the whole series, though. Like the Clone Wars took place over however many years, and so this series is just going to follow all of these sort of like mundane moments that hopefully get us closer to understanding why these characters turned out the way that they did.
Yep.
And I know that from a lot of people, Ahsoka gets a lot of flack in this first season for being annoying. And to that, like, I'm watching this with a new set of eyes and trying to think about the other type of feedback that this show has received over the years. And I really didn't get like beyond annoying than I expected her to be. Like any child is annoying. Have you ever met a 14-year-old?
Any child is annoying.
Like they're going to be sassy. They're going to be like emotional and like, well, I know what's best, and like I think we should do this instead. And especially when your master is Anakin Skywalker, Mr. fucking emotion. It just like it makes sense that she is the way that she is, and I think it would be inauthentic to make her like easygoing or not annoying. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
she's supposed to be annoying.
And that's the whole point with her. Like, give it time. She's going to grow out of it. Like, whatever. Like, I'm not worried about that bit. What I will say though, consequently, as I said, in the overall Star Wars arc, this doesn't really do a whole lot, but also for the characters, nothing really happens either, excluding learning a bit about Plo Koon and his, love and care for all life, it seems. And
he called little Soka, and that Jake and I both looked at each other and we were like,
so at most, this should increase your, love for Plo Koon. I did hear that, I don't know if this is like true or just like someone's like take, but the clones that shoot Plo Koon out of the sky were the clones that he saved in this episode.
Shut up.
Yeah.
That is tragic. I'm going to need to take the day off work tomorrow to process that.
Oh
my God.
I know. Can you imagine if that's true? Like more so, I mean, yeah, it's like really tragic for Plo, but like think about that. If you are basically a prisoner in your own mind in that moment.
Yeah.
And then after, you
realize what you've done.
You realize what you've done. You have to live with it. Like that's wild.
Yeah.
Like, cause you're going to remember all that. Like I would bet you most Jedi don't have good bonds with their clones. Not saying like they're like horrible, evil masters, but like, I bet you a lot of them are very militaristic, no attachment, whatever. But there was some like Anakin's bond with the 501st. And I don't know how, I mean, I think Obi-Wan might be a good example. I don't know if he's got a great relationship with Cody.
Yeah, I think that's always felt kind of forced by the fans.
Yeah. Like Cody shooting like Obi-Wan out of the sky. It's like, all right, like I guess boss is bad. Like,
Yeah. All right, that's a new order.
mm-hmm.
Also, I noticed that Anakin isn't leading the 501st. This
Right,
one, he's
yeah.
leading Shadow Squadron.
Yep.
And I was trying to pay attention and see like when we're gonna get like the first Rex moment, and he didn't appear in these first couple episodes. So I wonder when we'll get to see the 501st and Rex. I did also hear one of the voices of the clones sounded just like Tech. I don't know if you had like caught that too, or I was like, well, he tapped into that same voice again.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the clones get really copy paste in these first few episodes.
But as we know, this show, where it ends versus where it begins, it's, it just gets
definitive
better and better
Star Wars.
Yeah. So we're not going too hard on it, but right now, I did want to say, because Clone Wars is really, it's going to be one of the most interesting pieces of Star Wars content we're going to rank, because it's so baked into arcs.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I thought would be fun, and then we'll just do this for the Clone Wars, but I thought we should also add in ranking all of the Clone Wars arcs.
Yeah.
See which is truly the best.
I like that idea.
And so right now, episode 1, like I'm not going to count anything that it's its own individual episode, but right now we have the Malevolence arc. And overall, gave it a 53.6%, which means it's watchable. It's not the best in the world, but it's watchable and enjoyable. And you guys, if you have not seen Star Wars, you should totally check it out. But that's our review of this first arc.
Yeah. Only 20,000 left.
Only 20,000 left, but